Hi everyone, Blake Hero here. Today I'm coming at you guys with a new video. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to beat the new Mulcharmy Fuwalos. And this card's kind of taken the game by complete storm. Every deck either has to respect it when deck building, or you have to completely change your deck choice in order to beat this card. So I don't really have that option, so we're gonna have to figure out how the hero deck can beat this Fuwalos. I've been play testing a lot and figuring out what the best options are. So first, I'll just talk about some of the bad options when it comes to non-engine. We'll go from bad to meh to good non-engine choices to beat this card. And then we'll show how the hero engine can beat the card very quickly and show the two routes and why one is much better than the other. So first, I wanted to talk about the bad options. I don't actually own these cards, so I'll just throw them up on screen. Is Sales Ban and Prohibition, calling Fuwalos. Of course, if you activate these cards, they can just chain the Fuwalos. And the other bad aspect is the fact that you have to activate these cards preemptively, and they could either just activate the card in standby phase because they're a continuous spell and a normal spell, or they could just not even have it, and then you just went -1 in card advantage. So just want to get those out of the way. Next, I'm going to show some of the meh options to beating Fuwalos. I have Talent, Heat Wave, and D-Force. So I'll talk about D-Force first because these kind of go hand in hand with each other. The problem with D-Force is it is good against the Fuwalos. The problem is if they draw any other non-engine, you're not going to be able to get to Plasma if they draw Fuwalos plus like an Imperm or an Ash, for example, and then you just have a dead card in the hand. So I really wanted all my non-engine to always be live, and that's why I think D-Force is a pretty meh option. It's great if you're able to get there, but you're assuming that they only have one piece of non-engine, and I just don't think that's very likely. And next we have Heat Wave and Talent. So the thing about Heat Wave and Talent is it's very, very reliant on your opponent. So in my experience recently, a lot of people have not been shotgunning Fuwalos against my deck specifically because they know I'm on hero. They've been holding it for the main phase, which makes Heat Wave a lot worse. Heat Wave's really cool because what you can do is if they Fuwalos or they shifter you, they'll probably do that during the draw phase or standby phase. Then you can activate Heat Wave and it completely skips their turn. And then you get to go back to your turn. And that's like a really neat idea. So like I like Heat Wave for that, but just in practice, they haven't been really activating Fuwalos against me in the standby phase. I think if you're on a deck like Yubel, for example, I think Heat Wave could be a cool option, but for hero, I just don't think it's really it. So then it really comes down to Talent. Like I said, a lot of people have been holding the Fuwalos for my main phase and then activating Fuwalos at that point. So Talent is in live, but the thing is that if they just adapt and they start activating it during the draw phase or standby phase, then like these two cards, like it's too situational for these cards. So I just kind of want cards that are always live, but these are some neat options, especially with comboing this with a card I'll talk about in the good section. So that's it for the meh options, I think. So finally, for the good options against the Fuwalos, here's what I found. I found Ash Blossom being a mandatory main deck staple. A lot of my games so far have been built around the Mulcharmy either resolving or stopping theirs from resolving. This card is a mandatory in the main deck. Next is the Call By. You should probably have Call By somewhere in your deck. It's not very good going second. It's like okay, but like that means they probably got set up and you probably can't win those games with how the format is right now. But Call By will always work against the Mulcharmy unless they have a second one, of course, which goes for both these cards. But they're still very good and will always work against the Mulcharmy. And then finally is the tech spots. I think you can pick between Thrust and Crossout. I would not play both. Deck building gets really, really strange when you try to fit both of these because this works with normal spells and traps and this works with hand traps. Then you have to play specific targets. We'll get into that to a second. So Thrust, basically what you're gonna do is they're gonna activate Charmy during the draw phase or standby phase. It does not matter. They activated a monster effect, and then you can Thrust for Barrier, for example, or for different Dimension Ground, which I'll throw up on screen because I don't currently have one. And basically what you're gonna do with Thrust is they're gonna try to turn skip you by activating the Charmy, and you're gonna turn skip them right back. You're gonna set DDG, you're gonna set Barrier, and they might be able to set up a little bit of something, but not enough to stop us from basically have all our cards live for the next turn, and all we had to do was commit normal traps to the deck. So that is thrust. So crossout is the, like, if you want a card for Mulcharmy or for shifter or droll, of course that means you have to play the targets. Like, you have to side the targets that you want for crossout, which can be a little bit restricting in deck building. But if you want a card that says the game is over, cross out your card. You cross out the Mulcharmy, the shifter, you can generally play through the other piece of non-engine that they have. Generally, not always, of course, but you then get to set up your full board, and those decks that are relying on shifter, relying on the Charmy resolving, those kind of decks, just, they can't beat the board that we set up, which is why they're trying to hand trap us to stop us from getting to that board. So crossout's really that card that you going first, you want the game to be over for Charmy. Now, really, these two cards you should be playing mandatory, but these are the cards you have to make a decision about. So I'll give you the kind of the pros and cons of picking one or the other. Thrust is amazing going second. Our deck has Fusion Destiny, Hero Lives, Miracle, Poly. Thrust works so well with our deck. But the thing is that Thrust is not as good going first. Setting the normal traps can be completely devastating depending on the matchup, and it requires less deck building space because crossout requires you to play the targets for it, and means you have to keep Charmy in the main deck going first, which can just be awkward. We'd have to also play shifter in the main deck, which again, if you draw it, can be very awkward. So Thrust really promotes very fluid deck building, but crossout's like this bomb card that you activate it going first and the game is just over. It is such a blowout, and like, it's insane how sacky this card can really be. I personally have been liking Thrust a little bit more. Crossout I've been having a lot of success with, but Thrust just makes deck building feel a lot more smooth. You don't have to play the targets, and you can bring it in going second. So I like Thrust, but Crossout's also a really, really good option. So that's it for the non-engine. Now I'm going to show you guys what you can do with the standard hero line. So we'll do a very classic hero line, which is going to be the Stratos and then the any hero monster. And we're going to say that our opponent has activated the Mulcharmy Fuwalos, and we understand that we are under it. So we can go normal summon the Stratos, grab the Ferris, then we can go the Ferris and pitch the any hero monster in the hand, which will then trigger the Ferris. We can place the increase, activate increase, tribute off the Ferris to summon out the increase. Increase's effect, we'll summon Vion, which means now our opponent gets one draw, which replaces the Fuwalos. We'll go Vion's effect, which will then dump Shadow Mist instead of Malicious. And then Shadow Mist effect's gonna trigger, and we're gonna add Plasma from our deck to our hand. We can next go Vion's effect to banish any hero monster to add Polymerization. And next, we can tribute these three to summon Plasma. So this is going to be where we would pass our turn. The reason why, if you've seen my last post and a little bit of my last deck profile, but not nearly as much as now, of the amount of non-engine that I'm playing, it's mostly because then you can back up Plasma with non-engine. That can be really strong. But let's just notice what we did here. So basically what we have in Grave setup is the increase as well as the poly. Then we have a 1900 attack, one-way skill drain for our opponent. So basically this Plasma is not meant to live. This Plasma is probably going to get outed, and we know this because he's only 1900 attack. It's really not hard for a deck to be able to do that. But now this Fuwalos is gone, so they have a 6-card hand to beat our Plasma and poly that we converted with using 2 cards in our hand, which was the Stratos and the increase. We have now converted it to a Plasma and a poly, which means we still have 3 other cards in hand, and we have a actually really good follow-up. So our opponent has a 6-card hand. They're probably going to need to use, I'm gonna say, around 3 cards to make a link monster or any beater that they can beat over the Plasma for. So when they out the Plasma, they've used their battle phase, and increase is gonna trigger. We'll place the increase back. We have the poly in hand with 3 other cards. So now they get to play the rest of their turn. It's not perfect. I mean, you're still not in the best position, but this is what we can do with the hero engine. So now they have 3 cards to play with in their hand. They're going to set up what they can, and then we're gonna draw, and we're gonna have poly plus 4 cards in hand with our increase set up. That gives us some options. We're in an okay position with just converting our hero engine into any kind of interruption against the Mulcharmy. So yeah, this is pretty much the main thing what you can do. So I want to show the problem of what happens if you try to go for the other line that we normally do when we get floodgated hand trapped, which is the Baguska. So to get to Baguska, you're gonna need a Hero Lives. That's pretty much the main thing, is you're gonna have to draw the Hero Lives. But even when you draw Hero Lives, it's really scary because you're going to give your opponent yet another draw. So they're going to have the Mulcharmy, we're going to have a Hero Lives, we're going to Hero Lives for Stratos, and then we'll activate Stratos' effect. We can search Shadow Mist, for example. So they got a draw already off of the Stratos because it came from the deck, because the Hero Lives. Normal summon, then we can overlay these two into Bagooska, and that's it. The problem is that we then give them another draw. So now they are going to have a lot of cards to try to out the Bagooska, and I don't really need to tell you how much one card can do in Yu-Gi-Oh!, i.e. the Fiendsmith Engine, Snake Eye Ash, Bonfire, any of those cards. The amount of advantage just one card can generate in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an entire world of difference whether we go for Bagooska or Plasma. So really, if you do draw the Hero Lives and you think you want to go for the Bagooska option, if you have another way to set up just the Stratos plus the Plasma instead, you might actually want to do that instead. Just normal summoning the Stratos instead and going for Plasma, because it gives them one less draw, which really is all of the difference in Yu-Gi-Oh! So yeah, I really appreciate all you guys for watching. This is going to be my last video pre-SUDA. Everything else is going to be post-SUDA now, just because we're getting really close, and that's the kind of content I really want to make. So yeah, let me know if you guys have found any other options to beat the Mulcharmy. These are just the stuff that I've come up with and kind of looked at other people, what other decks are doing. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate all the support, and stay tuned for my next upcoming uploads, which is going to be like a road to SUDA sort of, because we're only about like a month out now in the time we're recording this. So thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for the next one. Peace.